Hello there. Okay, so we're looking at gear stuff that you should be having taken out there with you towards these contingency locations for the whole Agile Combat Employment bit. When it comes down to it, hey, if mission dictates gear, your role will also dictate the gear. I really want to kind of take a step away from the security forces and focus a little bit more on those POL, crew chiefs, and weapons loaders, just because obviously they're not getting a whole lot of love from a big Air Force. If you guys saw some of the pictures that I had uploaded from our recent exercise that we did, all of those guys, they were issued out these 15-year-old UCP pattern, I want to say they're Gen 3 IOTVs, and then Shaw Air Force Base, they recently did an exercise. Same thing, this time they had the old school OD Green M16 Alice triple mag pouches that were attached to their gear, so we definitely haven't come, and started equipping the rest of the force. Something I think definitely needs to change. I think the CL team should be kind of that primary focus. For the forward operating site, wear whatever, not too concerned. The likelihood of getting into some sort of ground contact is a little bit limited. And of course the IOTV Gen 3, when it comes down to, especially have all the DAPs and the groin protector and stuff, will do pretty well against shrapnel. When we are kind of pressing, okay, as the war kind of progresses, we start getting further and further, away from, friendly lines, closer towards the enemy line. That is where, my threat is definitely going to start increasing. I want to make sure that the gear that I am issued out when this first kicks off is something that I can wear as the war has been progressing on for a couple of months now. Meaning that when we first open up a CL, probably be a friendly base with maybe some host nation forces. I really don't need a whole lot of anything. I'll probably go out there to t-shirt and start refueling, rearming these aircraft, and I'll be just fine. As we start getting closer, we come into enemy missile range. Now I'm worried about IDF. Get even further along. Now I'm worried about possible resistance fighters or actual uniformed enemy presence. So I want to make sure that everything that I have is something I will be able to actually take with me on the long run. If I am equipping an overall force, I want to make sure that it meets all the objectives as far as safety. So I want to make sure that if I have soft armor, hard plates, I've got my camouflage, that way I can conceal myself. Doesn't work a whole lot if you're actually out there on those on the flight line, refuel and rearming, but it is what it is. But I want to make sure that if I'm going to equip everybody, let's make sure it's at least somewhat decent, okay? So that MSV Gen 2, I did a couple of videos talking about that. It's not the worst thing in the world, okay? If I am somebody who is holding security full time, hey, a Molly carrier is going to be your best bet. However, for, once again, those POL, crew chiefs, those weapons loaders, those guys who are actually focusing on, ginning up that aircraft, maybe I don't need to wear all of that stuff, full time. But I want to make sure that I at least have, my protection. So I like the slim down, the low profile vest that comes with it, with that MSV Gen 2. Said slim it down. So go and throw your hard plates in there. You've got soft armor. You've now got hard plates. And if it comes down to there's going to be some sort of ground attack, right? Some sort of ground threat. It's not a whole lot for me to go ahead and grab something this. So I like the split front chest rigs. I think them being worn over the split carriers really works out well. And once again, something like this, being able to be a rifleman is going to be the secondary duty for those guys. We're primarily out there to, once again, refuel, rearm aircraft, but in the event of a fight, I want to make sure that I have all of my stuff. So this is that puzzle system from L4 Performance, where I'm just taking a bunch of pouches. I've just kind of connected them together. There's a lot of split front chest rigs out there on the market. Spiritus makes their 34 Alpha. Just Google it, you'll find all sorts of ones that are out there. But this right here said I'm able to hold 6 magazines. I've got water, I've got medical, I've got my GP pouches that are on here. Of course, if I don't need some of this stuff, I can always just take it off. But what I'm doing with this is I'm taking this with my rifle, and I'm just going to set that off to the side. I've got the guy who's on the jammer. He drives up, starts loading up a bomb. I'm over there with that slit carrier. I don't got to worry about anything catching. I don't have all this extra weight as I'm hunched over trying to get underneath there. And that is something that is that it's just not been talked about, but yeah, comfort doesn't need to be a huge massive thing. It's something that the big Air Force is going to focus on. But for the guy who's always wearing it, I'm a big fan of comfort, and of course safety. It comes down to snag hazards. So that is kind of my push. That's kind of my recommendation. The CL teams, they should all be issued out the MSV Gen 2s. If you go out and buy your own plate carrier, hey, more power to you. And then some sort of split chest rig. Now I can wear something like this. So this here's my chest rig that I've been using for a while. It's that WC SIG. So this here is not a split front. I can get this on over slick armor. It just takes a little bit like longer. So for, just trying to aid in like the quickness of it, I've got all my stuff set down on the side, doing all of my stuff like with the A-10s. The A-10, hey, we got enemy contact coming. Cool. Flush those aircraft. They get out of there. I throw this right here on. Excuse me. Throw this here on. I go ahead and pick up my rifle. I can now get into the fight. When those aircraft are gone, hey, there's nothing more to do anymore. Now I'm going back to security. Once again, I just throw this right here on, grab my rifle, and I go set up a security posture, doing whatever it is that, like the CO lead or that security forces, defense team leader is telling you, hey, you're going to be over here, jump into this DFP, go hang out over here, and what have you. But so just the ability to be able to take on and off that fighting load so you can worry, actually focus on that primary mission, is something that I think would really benefit a lot of those folks. So that's just my recommendation. So if you want to wear a molly carrier with all that stuff on it, go for it. So just remember, hey, we're looking at snag hazards. You're wearing a whole lot of kit that you might not need for it you're doing. But this right here said it's not too bad. It's a little heavy, but said set that there off to the side, and when you need it, it's right there, easy to get on. Then we go ahead and jump in the fight. So I'll cover more of the other stuff later on, but I hope this here helps. If you guys have any questions, put it down in the comments, shoot me a message. Anything that any recommendation you guys got, hey, put it down. We're just here to share that knowledge. So hope it helps. There you guys.